Thank you. Let's begin our gas conference. And this session will be addressing the matters of global trends in the gas markets, the impact of the pandemic as regards gas, methanol, and another important point, I think, is that in the run-up to the pandemic, the market was already weakened. So I hope that today, thanks to our panelists, we'll be able to better recognize what's going on in the market and what can be expected in the fallout after the pandemic, globally, in Russia as well. With that, I'd like to give the floor to Vitaly Yermakov, who is going to give us a global overview. Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everybody. Let me bring up my slides. I hope it's on. I'll try to be brief and speed up maybe to leave some more room for Q&A. The slides are in English. I'll be speaking in Russian though, as I was asked by the organizers, because this time most of the audience speak Russian. I have two parts in my presentation. Number one is a brief overview of the global situation, mostly in Europe, because this affects Russia more. And then I have something about prices globally. The second part will be on a more long-term outlook. This would be things that have to do with major trends in the gas sector. What's been going on in Europe? We saw a sharp decline, especially so, and then continuing from the second to the third quarter, followed by a recovery slightly. And then we expect that the European gas consumption will go down in the annual terms by 7%, down to 462 million, which would be 35 billion cubes year to year. Here is a recent report by the IEA. It states that they have already saw recovery in demand starting from June. So here is a piece of good news for you. Now on to the supply sources, which were hit the most. First, these would be pipeline suppliers, including Russia, who probably got hit the hardest. If we look at LNG, though, there was an oversupply. But then again, shipments increased this first 5 months of the year. You see an uptick in LNG supplies, especially earlier in the year, as the prices were still somewhat higher than after. As for pipeline, there was a consistent downward trend. On to prices. Here is the regular presentation that you have seen many times. This is the chart that we have been using in our institute. We do this to better track LNG margins. Starting this summer, this LNG margin, as we call it, calculated as a difference between the highest netback from the European or Asian market minus Henry Hub price, then including some US data. We have seen that this margin went negative, meaning that LNG supply netbacks to both Europe and Asia grew lower than the US prices. This is absolutely horrible for all suppliers that are taking major losses. But then again, this is a reflection of the oversupply that we've seen in the market. Looking at these forward curves, presently it seems that this situation will continue through to the end of the year. For LNG suppliers, it's either taking major losses or cutting shipments and ceasing procurement, especially when it comes to LNG coming from the US. It can be argued, if we assume the outlook on the market by the players, and if we assume these curves, it seems that we'll see first signs of recovery at the end of the year, where we'll see prices go up in both the US and Europe. Let's hope so, at least. As for Russian gas, this is the most recent stat for Russian gas pipeline exports. This comes from the tax service. Unfortunately, this lumps together short haul and long haul. There is no breakdown, but anyway, you can see a major drop in prices, especially in April and May, where in May the price for Russian gas in Europe was not just 94, as you can see, but it dipped as low as $80 per 1,000 cubes. We know that Belarus has a fixed price of 1 to 7 US dollars per 1,000. This was for May, but this is a weighted average, so some prices were even lower. As it stands, the situation is exceptionally harmful for Gazprom. Export margins are negative, export netbacks are lower than the regulated in domestic prices, and these are exports that are delivered at a loss. How long will it last? Well, we can only hope that prices rebound. And Gazprom made a move. They decoupled their contracts from oil equivalent. Here's their disclosure, and it says that their prices are mostly pegged to exchange quotes, exchange rates. And Gazprom here is price taker. They cannot move the price. They are not trying to secure the market share. It's just taking what they're given from Europe, hoping for market rebalancing and prices recovering going forward. Europe as a market is getting more and more precarious for Russia, and the pivot to the east that was declared in early 2010s should be expedited as ever. But it has been slow for various reasons, but today this is priority number one. If you compare it to Europe, there are not only short-term issues, but long-term challenges as well. Apart from diversification of geography, monetization pathways should also be diversified. I'll not go deeply into the projects that you can see in the slide. These are already launched. I think it will be covered by other presenters. This is another major priority. The concern is to reiterate that the regulated domestic prices in Russia are now, in fact, higher than the US prices and even European prices, albeit for a short time. So the upfront cost for these projects goes up because we've lost the competitive edge of having cheaper gas. It's lost, and it's not yet clear if it will be recovered. Even with the FX rate, our internal prices are higher than in the US or Europe. It's a major challenge when it comes to monetization plans. There are also major externalities that threaten Russia's position as a hydrocarbon exporter, because there could be attempts to regulate this export. For example, this would be international transborder carbon tax. This can be another major blow to the returns on Russian exports. because we have been seeing actual attempts at the energy mix in the developing countries, or redistribution of flows, or trying to get a piece of that cake by levying this tax. This is for a longer term already, but it is still a very much valid. So it's time to start asking hard questions. The energy transition is another major topic. And we are waiting for three miracles to happen in technology, in economy, and in policy. Because the technology is still lagging behind. There is nothing to actually ensure zero carbon energy. As for the economy, the types of solutions that are proposed for that are still very much expensive. So the feasibility is still under question. The economic feasibility of this transition, especially if the regulators insist on a fast and radical shift. And then policy. The politics of the transition are bound to stoke tensions between the developing countries, since they're in a position that they have to be carbon intensive. This is going to be a source of tensions between this part of the world and the countries who have already undergone this transition. As for price cycles, I think a very serious question here that relates to gas monetization, by the way, very serious question is about what most producers are going to do. They have large stocks or reserves, and if they decide or anticipate a fast transition, the energy transition, this could lead them to trying to monetize their stocks faster, which will drive in turn a major oversupply, which will drive prices down. It's a very dangerous scenario, especially for Russia. What we've seen this year might be not just part of the cycle, but something that's here to stay. Permanently low prices pushed down by the oversupply. This could actually come about because people are desperate to monetize their projects in time. Given all that, it's an open question whether Russia has the time to make this pivot away from the European market. Because as a market, it has been stalling, especially if you look at what's going to happen in the future. This might not be exclusively technical, but may be driven by the policy of the energy transition, which is going to be pursued really strictly, trying to phase out hydrocarbons and even gas from the energy mix. So the crux of the matter is trying to look into the future. What's the future for their companies, energy companies globally and in the world? What can be done to not be hostage to the regulators who might begin insisting on full and fast phasing out of hydrocarbon from the energy production? With that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. I hope that we'll have some more time to discuss it during the Q&A.